Hey, Michelle.
Hey, Sean. Thanks for taking some time to chat with me.
Problem. Good to be here.
Yes. Can't wait to hear about some of these stories from your long career with the FBI. Yes.
Only
Facts. And, I think this kind of brings to life what we do in an interesting way. So just interested in hearing a bit about some of the things that you've seen and what maybe could have prevented them. So.
No, it's good, and I think it's a good parallel to what I did before when I was in the FBI. And I tell people that my time at PwC has really been a continuation of the same mission, but just in a very different way.
Right.
So for me, it's been sort of just continuing the mission, but in just a very different, I would say, way of doing the same thing.
That's great. Well, maybe we could just explore a few of the situations that you ran into for this true financial crime episode. So maybe just share with me, I know you mentioned one that related to money laundering with children's games. So I'm just curious about this and what happened.
Right. So there's money laundering happening every day, obviously. But specifically, what I was referring to there is at a time where I was working Colombian drug cartels in Miami, a lot of what we did involved not only confiscating cocaine or heroin or whatever it might be, but what was happening to the actual proceeds of all of the drugs that were coming into the country. And so during, one of my operations, I was dealing with basically a courier for one of the cartels off the northeast coast of Colombia in Barranquilla.
Wow.
And they were actually laundering on the scheme of about $5 to $10 million a week.
Wow.
And obviously they had to find a way to hide all this income that they were receiving based on the cocaine that was being bought and the heroin. And so what they had done is they actually had these sealed children's games. So think of Monopoly, think of, whatever the Clue.
Life.
I'm dating myself, Life, Risk.
Yeah.
And what they had these games, they looked brand new. They had the plastic over the top, they had the price tag. And then when you kind of took off the plastic, you open it up, they were just stacks and stacks of $100 bills. And what he was doing is he was actually sending box loads of this up to his counterpart in New York, who had a jewelry store.
Wow.
And they were actually, basically, they'd have a piece of jewelry that, say, you could normally buy for $200. Well, they would show that receipt to be $2,000.
Got it.
And so they were washing the money as they did that over and over. So you see, like a lot of people think of drug dealers, they think of it as kind of a simple, like, oh, there's people that buy drugs, sell drugs. Yeah. It's really this ecosystem that involves businesses, people, banks, et cetera, that all are part of, the broader conspiracy, would call it in the FBI, but were part of the criminal activity.
That's crazy. I mean, what would you say could be done to identify, those scenarios or highlight some of the money that's being transferred? Is there bank monitoring? What kinds of things do you see,
Yeah, so I think we do a lot of that now at our firm, right, with our financial crimes unit, and we look at any money laundering and what activities we do. But what I have seen, I guess, is twofold. One, I think a lot of companies do it as a compliance exercise. Yeah. So they're not really looking for money laundering as much as from a regulatory perspective. And I don't mean that there are no companies out there that are trying to, that's not true.
Right.
All right. But I would just say, I think there are a lot of data points that one could gather, right? So how do you look at an individual that maybe is going to several financial institutions?
Yep.
Right? And how do you pick up some of that anomalous behavior of what they're doing? How do you look at someone whose basically IRS return does not justify them, driving around in a, Lamborghini or whatever the car of choice is? Yeah. Right? So I think there are a lot of data points that we could focus on collectively that would help us do this. The other thing is, especially in Miami, right, we have in FinCEN puts out what they call SARs, right, suspicious activity reports. And any time, a lot of people don't know that you have to actually report a currency transaction. It's called a CTR, currency transaction report, of any deposit over $10,000.
Okay, yeah.
All right. So what they would do when I was in Miami is we would get dozens of these reports where, name, Jane Doe, whatever, went to 5 banks and deposited $9,900.
Yeah.
Right. So it was very obvious that there was something there. However, when you went to the bank and you asked about this customer, they would say, well, where's your subpoena? So they're not going to help you. And again, that's driven by legal
privacy,
right? Legal matters. And I'm not suggesting that a bank or something should provide that willingly. But I do think there's a way that we as a collective community can maybe help each other, right? Stop some of this activity. Like I would ask, why isn't that person at the bank actually also filling out, that same type of thing versus it being caught?
Right.
And a lot of times you'd find a wink and a nod that the person, the teller or whatever it would be a cousin or a friend or something, and wouldn't say anything.
So it's almost training people culturally to identify those types of things within an organization and maybe look beyond what's right in front of them.
100%. And I think I would say the parallel is I've worked with some call centers, and one of the best practices is on a weekly basis, because a lot of fraud happens right from call centers.
Right.
Is we have sort of a conversation about what type of schemes have we seen this week and experienced. So we're sort of sharing and cross-pollinating some of those experiences and trying to detect more fraud.
That's great.